I am 91 years old. At this age, you stop pretending certain things don't matter. There is a woman I never chose, and I spent most of my life convincing myself I did the right thing. Her name was Claire. I met her when I was 32. I married someone else when I was 34. For 50 years, I told myself that feelings fade, that responsibility lasts, that choosing safety was choosing correctly. From the outside, my life looked complete. A marriage that made sense, a home that felt solid, children who never questioned whether their parents were happy. And we were, in a way. But some choices don't disappear just because you made them once. They stay with you. Not as regret exactly, but as a quiet presence, a reminder of a path you didn't take. I never spoke her name out loud. Not to my wife Eleanor, not to my children, not even to myself. I convinced myself that silence was loyalty, that letting go was maturity, that choosing stability meant choosing correctly. Only now, with fewer tomorrows than yesterdays, do I understand something uncomfortable. Some loves don't fade. They wait, patiently, until you're honest enough to admit they mattered. This is the part of my life I never told anyone. Not because it was forbidden, but because I was afraid of what it would reveal about me. I met her when I was 32. Her name was Claire. We worked in the same building, different departments. Small conversations at first, coffee breaks, shared elevators, ordinary moments. But something about her felt dangerous. Not because she caused chaos, but because being around her made me feel honest. I didn't need to impress her, didn't need to perform a version of myself that felt acceptable. With her, I felt seen in a way that made hiding impossible. There was one morning that clarified everything. We were having coffee. She was telling me about a book she'd been reading, not trying to impress me, just sharing something that mattered to her. And I realized I was more interested in watching her talk than in anything else happening in my life. That terrified me, because wanting to stay in that moment meant admitting that everything else felt incomplete. So I finished my coffee, made an excuse, and left. That was the first time I chose safety over her. At the same time, there was Eleanor. Steady, kind, reliable. Someone everyone approved of. Someone who fit naturally into the life I was supposed to build. Claire never asked me for anything. Never pushed, never crossed a line. But every conversation with her felt like a question I was avoiding. Who are you when no one is watching? And what do you want when safety isn't the deciding factor? The choice didn't happen all at once. There was no dramatic moment, no confession, no goodbye. It happened quietly, the way most irreversible decisions do. Eleanor wanted marriage, a timeline, a future that could be planned, children, stability, something solid to stand on. Claire wanted honesty, not promises, not guarantees, just the courage to choose what felt true. I told myself love should feel calm, that certainty mattered more than intensity, that building a life required discipline, not doubt. So I chose Eleanor, not because I loved her more, but because loving her felt safer, easier to explain, easier to defend, easier to live with in the eyes of others. I never told Claire the full truth. I framed it as timing, as practicality, as life moving in a different direction. She nodded, smiled softly, and accepted it in a way that still haunts me. We stopped talking after that, not out of bitterness, but because some connections can't survive pretending. I married Eleanor, built the life everyone expected, and convinced myself that choosing stability meant choosing right. But there are decisions you don't finish making when you make them. They follow you, quietly, waiting for the years to pass, until one day you realize you're not asking what if anymore. You're asking, why did I need safety more than truth? On the surface, my life worked. That's the dangerous part. Eleanor and I built something stable. A house, routines, holidays that repeated themselves. Friends who said we were lucky. Children who grew up believing we were solid. And we were. Solid, dependable, functional. There was affection, respect, a quiet partnership that made everything run smoothly. But there was also something missing. One evening, Eleanor was reading in bed. I looked at her and thought, I could tell her right now. About Claire, about the doubt, about the part of me that never fully arrived. But instead I asked if she wanted tea. She said yes, and we never had that conversation. Conversation stayed practical after that. Feelings were discussed only when necessary. Deeper questions were quietly avoided by both of us. I told myself this was maturity, that passion fades, that real love is calm, predictable, manageable. But sometimes, late at night, lying next to Eleanor, I would think about Claire. Not the woman herself, but the version of me that existed around her. The one who felt honest without effort. I never spoke those thoughts aloud. I buried them under responsibility, under the belief that wanting more was selfish. The life I chose didn't feel wrong. That's what made it harder. It just felt incomplete, in a way I kept telling myself didn't matter. Years passed, and practicality began to show its price. Eleanor didn't complain, but she became quieter, more careful with what she shared. I noticed it, but I interpreted it as peace, as the absence of conflict, as proof that we were doing things right. What I didn't understand then was that silence doesn't always mean comfort. Sometimes it means resignation. One night we were having dinner. She had made my favorite meal. We talked about the children, about plans for the weekend, about ordinary things. And I looked at her and thought, she deserves to be loved without doubt. But instead of saying anything, I reached across the table and squeezed her hand. She smiled, grateful for the gesture, unaware that it was also an apology for everything I wasn't giving her. There were moments when Eleanor would start a sentence, pause, and then change the subject. Moments when I sensed she wanted something more, something deeper, but didn't believe it was worth asking for. And I let that happen, because acknowledging it would have required honesty about myself, about what I had chosen, and about what I had quietly left behind. The cost wasn't loud. It didn't explode. It accumulated in distance, in unasked questions, in a marriage that worked but never fully opened. And the choice I made at 32 had become the shape of my entire life. Claire never disappeared from my life. Not really. She didn't stay as a fantasy or a dramatic memory, but as something quieter, a thought that returned in ordinary moments, while driving, while folding laundry, while sitting alone in rooms that felt finished. I didn't think about her every day, but she appeared often enough to matter. Not as regret, but as a question I never answered. With her, I didn't feel like I had to be careful. I spoke without measuring my words. I laughed without checking myself. I felt chosen for who I was, not for how reliable I could be. That frightened me, because wanting her meant wanting a different life, one without guarantees, one where comfort wasn't promised. So I told myself love wasn't enough, that stability mattered more, that feelings pass. And they did in a way. But what never passed was the sense that I had closed a door without ever looking back to see who I left on the other side. I chose certainty over truth. And even now, decades later, I can still feel the weight of that choice in the quietest moments. Time has a way of stripping excuses away. As I grew older, the reasons I gave myself began to sound thinner. I stopped believing I chose the right life. I started understanding that I chose the safer one. Safety looks wise when you're young. It feels responsible. It earns approval. But at 91, approval no longer means much. What matters is honesty. And the truth is, I avoided pain by avoiding depth. I avoided uncertainty by avoiding myself. I see now that Eleanor deserved the truth, not perfection. Claire deserved a decision, not silence. And I deserved the courage to choose what felt alive, not just what felt secure. The tragedy isn't that I didn't end up with the woman I loved. Life doesn't promise fairness. The tragedy is that I never allowed myself to fully choose anyone. I lived carefully, but I loved cautiously. And caution, over time, can become its own kind of loneliness. That realization didn't arrive with panic. It arrived with clarity. And clarity at this age doesn't ask for change. It asks for truth. Now, at 91, I don't replay arguments or achievements. I replay moments. The way Claire once looked at me, like she was waiting for an answer I never gave. The way Eleanor slowly stopped asking questions she sensed wouldn't be met. I don't carry guilt the way I used to. I carry understanding. I see that love isn't only about who you choose, but how fully you choose them. Half choices leave long shadows. I don't know if my life would have been better if I had been braver, but I know it would have been truer. And that matters now, because when time narrows, truth feels lighter than justification. If there's one thing I wish I had known earlier, it's this. Security can keep you comfortable, but only honesty keeps you connected. And connection, real connection, is the only thing that softens the passing of time. Everything else fades quietly. Only the unlived parts keep asking to be remembered. At 91, I no longer confuse love with comfort. I see now how often I told myself that choosing safety was the same as choosing wisely. It isn't. Wisdom isn't always calm. Sometimes it asks you to step into uncertainty, with no guarantee of outcome. I believed love should feel settled, predictable, contained. But the love that changes you rarely feels that way at the beginning. It asks questions. It disrupts routines. It exposes parts of you you'd rather keep protected. I avoided that exposure, not because I didn't care, but because I cared enough to be afraid of losing control. Looking back, I don't blame myself. I did what many people do. I chose the path that looked sensible, that earned approval, that avoided immediate pain. What I didn't understand then is that pain doesn't disappear when you avoid it. It waits. And later, it returns not as heartbreak, but as quiet wondering, as a life that feels finished, yet still unanswered. That's what stays with me now. Not sorrow, but the question of who I might have been if I had trusted myself enough to choose what felt true. If you're still listening, thank you. Not because this was entertaining, but because it takes patience to sit with something unresolved. I didn't tell this story to warn you, and I didn't tell it to romanticize regret. I told it because many lives are shaped not by mistakes, but by choices that feel reasonable at the time. If there's someone in your life you think about more often than you admit, someone you keep filing away under not practical or not the right moment, maybe pause. You don't have to act. You don't have to decide today. Just be honest with yourself about what you're protecting and what it's costing you. If a thought surfaced while you were listening, you're welcome to leave it below. Not for answers, just to name it. Sometimes saying something out loud is the first brave thing we do. And while there's still time, don't let fear be the only voice making your decisions. Some truths deserve to be chosen, not postponed. Thank you for giving me your time.